to order the special meeting of the Board of Education, September 23rd, 2020. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May I have a motion to approve the revised agenda?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Matt, please, for personnel.
Thank you very much. Before I request approval for the items listed under personnel, I'd like to point out two things in particular. One, I'd like to point out the appointment of Lisa Sudin, who is going to be Elsie's new secretary. Congratulations to Lisa. And I'd also like to point out Marisol Jackson, who is an experienced assistant principal from another school district, who has decided to join us here as the next assistant principal at the high school. So congratulations to Marisol. And with that, I'd like to request approval for the items listed under personnel.
Can I have a motion?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations. And welcome to Lisa. Lisa's already been here, but welcome
Thank
to your
you.
new position. And now can we please move on to the item for the resolution for the contracts? Item number 5, do I have a motion to approve the resolutions for 5.1 through, I believe, 5.6? Excuse me, 5.5.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Item number 6 on the agenda is the oath of office for Superintendent of Schools, Elsie Rodriguez.
I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of Superintendent of Schools of the Monroe-Woodbury Central School District according to the best of my abilities.
Thank you very much. Business and financial, Patrick.
Yeah, thank you, Stacy. So I would respectfully request the approval of the items under the business financial section of the agenda, which include approval of Orange Ulster BOCES contracts. It's something that's slightly new. We haven't done that in the past, but it requires the board president's signature, and I think we spend a lot of money with BOCES, so it's something that makes sense to do. And then 2 budget transfers that require board approval because they exceed the $35,000 policy threshold.
Motion?
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
So I have a question, Stacy.
Yes.
So the budget transfer for the unemployment expense, is there an addendum in executive content that I don't, because I don't see anything. I see something for the technology.
My computer is actually, the battery's dead. There is no, it doesn't matter. You want to Okay. So the second budget transfer is just unemployment, and it's into the unemployment code from the teacher retirement system code. And it's basically to reallocate resources for unemployment expenses that we're experiencing right now. We have a bill from the New York State Department of Labor for about $285,000. We budget $125,000. Obviously, the unemployment expenses have gone through the roof for most school districts. We anticipate to get about half of that back through the CARES legislation, but we don't know when that's going to occur. We have very little information about how that process is going to work. If you want or need more backup on that, we could provide that, Dawn.
Okay.
Basically, dozens of people will bill quarterly by New York State, and we're considered a reimbursement system or process where they apply to New York State Department of Labor, they receive the unemployment benefits, and then we're sent a report and an invoice, and we're supposed to review that, and if there's an issue or we dispute that, we would then take that up with the Department of Labor. But it's one of those things where the beneficiaries receive the benefits up front, they're approved, and then we're billed later and quarterly, so.
And just to add to that, we have seen some irregularities, people who are not entitled to it. And so even though they're not entitled to it, they still charge us, and we still have to pay for that. The plan is, as Mr. Cahill said, that we would be reimbursed for that money. but at this point, we have not. So that's been a concern for ours for quite some time, since COVID. There's been some fraudulent, unemployment requests. And as I said, because of the situation, they automatically pay people, even though they're not entitled to it.
And we're required to, as you said, Elsie, we're required to pay and then, sort of not litigate exactly, but run through the dispute after the fact and get credits afterwards.
I guess for clarity, we were unbudgeted because we didn't anticipate them being so high due to COVID, correct?
Yes, correct, yeah. It was one of those things where we did increase that line. That line in the past was like, $25,000 to $40,000. We bumped it to $125,000. But,
So high.
who knew what we were in for, right? And we still don't know what that reimbursement is gonna look like.
Right.
And I
Or
think the
when.
rules
Or when.
are also different, because, so we didn't lay anyone off, but even though we didn't lay anyone off, people who were part-time and didn't get work as a result of COVID, they did apply for unemployment insurance, and they did receive it. And so there are new rules that are very different than it would have been in the past, so I think that's the other piece.
Okay.
And there were entire systems that didn't operate in the summer. So a lot of those folks did apply for unemployment. So
So,
that's,
I actually have a question. We are only responsible for the straight unemployment, not the extra money that was given, correct?
the $600 you're referring to?
Yes.
That's correct. We're
Okay.
not responsible for the $600. That's,
And I do know that people did apply and were approved because they were automatically just approving people. So
Yeah,
it's probably gonna take a long time for that money to come back, or they'll penalize the people that got that money and they'll end up on their
Correct.
taxes later.
They'll have to
So
repay it.
somebody's gonna pay later.
They'll get their money someday.
They'll get it somehow.
right, and then we'll get our
And
money,
then you'll
but
get
that,
ours.
that's gonna be,
It's gonna
that's
take
gonna be
a
a long
while.
time. And, we haven't really gotten the proper guidance to say, okay, so we know that 40% of your unemployment insurance is not correct. You're disagreeing with us, and you're gonna get that money back. That has not been,
They can also make sure that people were let go due to COVID,
correct.
due to COVID. Well, actually, we extended, the 600 as well, because people were getting that 600 that shouldn't have gotten the 600.
Right, and there are people, the other piece that's interesting is if you work for our district and have another job, and you were let go of that job, we also got hit with that unemployment, even though the person is still working with us. And it's not the employment here in Monroe-Woodbury, it's somewhere else. So it's been very, very complicated. So I know that was really unanticipated, and even if we knew that there was gonna be people who weren't working, it still doesn't match. So that number is extremely high.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you for the explanation, and I apologize, I just want to go back to add one question to either Matt or Eric in regards to the clubs. Are we approving those this evening in anticipation that those will begin October 1st at those buildings? I know that we had discussed that based on what could potentially start up as of October 1st.
Right, so the advisors that we're appointing this evening are for the clubs that we are anticipating being able to run right now, knowing
Okay.
that they're gonna be able to run remotely. There are other clubs that we still need additional information that may involve out-of-district competitions and things like that are kind of up in the air that we are getting final clarification on before we decide that we're gonna fully be running those clubs. There are
Okay.
some musical ensembles, for example, that we have to work out some logistics for, the drama productions. Like, we're still digging into logistical items, so this is a partial list of where we're at right now. The elementary buildings also have clubs, they're still working out some of the details for their clubs, so we wanted to at least have appointed what we are projecting being able to start early October.
Okay.
And then at future Board of Ed meetings, adding as we get more information and plan for others.
Okay, and is the goal, and I don't want to put him on the spot, but I know at least Mr. Cassie's here, is the goal at this point that those clubs that are going to begin, those will somehow be advertised in the next week or two to the students so that they know what's actually available?
So I can, right now on the district website, if you go to the high school link and you go to clubs and activities, what's
Okay.
up there right now is the description of all the clubs. But
Okay,
it's the meeting dates from the 1920 school year. We are gonna be updating that to include the Google Classroom codes, because one of the expectations for us is because they're gonna be existing remotely, that every club has a Google Classroom.
Okay,
The meeting times and dates, as well as the Google Classroom code, will be added there on the district website for kids to be able to join the clubs. Even though a lot of the advisors have already put the information out to the student body, just to make sure that the full list is publicized so that the kids know where to go if they're interested in joining.
So when you say they've already put the information out to the student body, how? How is
So
that?
in general, similar to what took place in the springtime, where the fall coaches put out the Google Classroom code saying anybody who's interested in participating, even though we weren't sure as to what was gonna be happening with sports and everything else, to at least get a general list of who's interested in participating. The advisors have started to do that. They started to create Google Classrooms to generate a list of who's interested. They haven't really started regularly meeting and things like that. But now we're going to compile that full list. The expectation is that all of the clubs function in that way.
So I guess to Stacy's point, to add on to that, would we then be able to put something together for our students to say, these are the clubs that are available? You may, I mean, what about incoming freshmen that don't
Yeah.
even know about existing clubs?
Yeah.
that's what I was referring to,
The-
because I think the people that,
We're already part of
I
it.
think what you're referring to are students that were already previously in a club.
Right.
So those faculty members have that information, but for those students who are either new to the building or
Right.
looking for a new club, they don't know what's being offered yet. That was my question.
Right,
as to how we put that out.
under the club section on the high school webpage right now, it says
Okay.
who the advisor is, and it shows what has previously existed, where
Okay,
Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so is the advisor, and the meetings are on Wednesday afternoons from 2 to 3 o'clock in room whatever.
okay.
Now the meetings are not gonna be in room, whatever, they're going to be online through Google Meet, so the Google Classroom code will be there along with the meeting times for them to be able to
So
join.
that's great, Eric, but we just need something to direct them there.
Oh, okay, all right, so oh, sorry, I apologize. So what you're
That's fair.
saying is communicating something to the students to say, look here, got it, gotcha. This
So
is-
I see, John,
Oh.
I think what should happen,
We will send an email out to students as
with a
well as
list of
parents.
everything.
Gotcha.
Yes, as
Yeah.
well as
I think
parents.
Gotcha,
that would be
gotcha.
better.
Like a
Sorry.
virtual club fair.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yep.
Correct.
100%.
Especially now that we're officially approving
See,
it.
you
let's
should
let
have just
them
let
know.
me answer to begin with.
Oh, sorry.
Well, I understood you, Stacy.
Okay, I appreciate the explanation. Okay.
I actually have a question
She's
about
good.
clubs that, so the advisors get stipends?
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
So clubs that never got to happen because we stopped school, what occurs at that point, when we stopped in March?
So we discussed that in the spring, if the club had not begun, and Matt can correct me if I'm wrong, but they did not receive their stipend. And I don't know how, we will have to assess that moving forward this year, if God forbid, we end up going fully remote and we don't have,
But what do you mean, Maureen? I don't understand, because the clubs they existed, they just continued in a virtual.
No,
correct.
not all of them.
Well, not all of them.
So the ones that did.
Right, and so
I'm
that's a
talking
good
about
point,
those.
because one of the
They
things
did it,
that we
those
talked
just-
about for the clubs is that we looked at, not every club is gonna come back, right?
Mhm.
Because it's not gonna be able to function in a virtual,
Correct.
right? So those clubs won't happen. Any club that we're putting forward from this point on is a club that can exist.
Either way.
And
Well,
they're all
but
existing,
remote.
they're all, the ones that you're approving tonight are all going to be, they're all gonna be
But I'm
remote.
talking about from March, when those did not.
Right.
And we weren't sure what we were doing and how it was happening, and we thought clubs were going, some clubs were, some
Mhm.
weren't. People weren't sure, were they going to do a virtual, could they do a virtual?
And I think that's exactly right. Some clubs were, some clubs weren't, some clubs could, some,
wanted, didn't know they were
Right.
supposed to.
and
It was a
Right.
little bit of a confusion.
Anybody who could operate remotely did. So
And
the,
they get
like
their
the
stipend
senior
after.
advisors, all of those people that had to do
Okay.
things, they did.
I just didn't know if they get the stipend prior
Yearbook staff,
or
right.
after, I had no idea. Okay.
And part of the reason, part of the rationale for us doing it this way moving forward is because we do have our remote-only students who we need to also have access to this. So the
Correct.
philosophy is,
That's right.
it needs to be remote. So
Yeah.
that way, if we shut down, it can continue to operate the way that it has now because they're already going to be remote and it maintains accessibility for our remote-only
everyone.
kids.
So basically, you're accommodating the remote, so if there are kids that are in school and wanted to
No, it's
be in
remote too.
person, how's
It's-
that working?
It's all
They
remote,
have to go home.
Yeah.
they go home.
right?
They go
Yeah.
home.
So
Gotcha.
the chances of a club now starting at 2 PM
Mhm.
are slim unless
It's
every,
slim to
unless
none.
every student who's there is present on that.
Because the hybrid kids who are physically in the building have to get
Have to
back
get
to their
home.
home to log in to take the remote, so right. So,
And that was
Okay.
definitely something that the students were very strong on. They wanted to have their
Yes.
clubs, they wanted to have these things, so we certainly are moving forward. But like, as Dr. Hausler said, not every club is moving forward.
Gotcha,
okay.
okay.
All right, thank you for the explanation. Committees on special education, can I have a motion to approve 8.1 and 8.2?
Motion. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And can I please get a motion to adjourn into executive session to discuss the potential discipline of a particular employee? Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, meeting adjourned.